ANC's 55th National Conference getting off to a slow start as delegates were finalizing registrations, we're told, late into the evening. Once Party President Cyril Ramaphosa started to deliver the political report, delegates began disrupting parts of it by singing and chanting. Just as things settled, Ramaphosa was also disrupted when former President Jacob Zuma entered the venue. Some of the KZN delegates, meanwhile, were singing Newzroom Zuma, which translates to "What has Zuma done?" It's also worth noting, by the way, that presidential hopeful Dr. Mkhize was nowhere to be seen, while Lindiwe Sisulu opted to demonstrate with MKMVA veterans outside the conference venue. A lot taking place yesterday. Let's make sense of it. Bring in our guests. Professor Andre Duvehange and Dr. Zamo Mbandlwa are both political analysts. Professor Duvehange joining us via our telephone line and Dr. Zamo via our video link. To both our guests, it's great to have you on the program. Thanks so much indeed for making time to speak to us. Prof, let me begin with you. Yesterday, Pulemabe, who speaks for the ANC, mentioned that there were technical glitches with their new registration system, and that's why things were so delayed. Are you surprised by that?
No, I am by no means surprised by that. We know that the registration processes within the ANC is controversial. We know that the organization is struggling with the registration processes. My understanding was also that level 6 load shedding brought a lot of problems, but I think there's politics involved in this. This is a very shaky start of a very important conference, which I believe can be a make or break conference, not only for the leadership, but also for the organization as such.
Yeah, the stakes are certainly high, Dr. Zamo, and that is because we also know that this is a numbers game. Depending on who is registered, that will affect who is given credentials, and that will affect ultimately who's elected to leadership.
Yes. Good morning, Ayanda, and good morning to the viewers at home. Yes, indeed, the delays were expected simply because this is a national conference. So we have delegates from all over the country. So definitely there will be some delays. But I don't know, Ayanda, if I can speak about the report itself that has been presented, because I think many people were very interested to listen to the president when he delivered his political report, because it's a political overview of what is happening and what is the view of the ANC on what is happening in the country and abroad.
Yeah, we'll speak about the report in just a moment. I just wanted to get the optics out the way. Part of what is also being talked about this morning is the former president's entrance while Ramaphosa was already on the podium. The former president's supporters are saying it's sheer coincidence. He didn't plan it that way. There are obviously other people who are way less, who are more circumspect, so to speak, who believe this was a very deliberate political move. What should we read into this, Dr. Zam?
Yeah, I think it's a public view that he deliberately wanted to disrupt, but I think the former president do not have a control over delegates. He do not control delegates. Particularly when a person is in leadership, when a person is a leader, is a former leader. So people, and I don't think the former president could be blamed for what has happened, simply because at this point he's not even contesting the leadership position. So if maybe he was contesting the leadership position, maybe noticed by delegates. But at this particular point, it's just a delegate like anyone else that is a brand delegate. Is not speaking in any level of the organization.
Sure.
So there is no way that you could even want to be seen as a person who is more relevant at this particular time.
All right. Professor Duvehange, do you agree with that? I mean, do you consider Zuma as being equal to just any other delegates in the conference?
Well, no, definitely he is not only a delegate in the conference. My take on President Zuma is that he is acting very deliberately and well planned, taking into consideration that he is still on the middle role. He is very active in politics. He did his things well planned. He took action at all the stages. He's planning his way forward. And the timing of him coming into the conference was a clearly planned initiative to disrupt President Ramaphosa. And he got also the support from at least some of the audience. And this, to me, is an indication of the high levels of divisions within the ANC at this point in time. And I believe this is going to be a very, very difficult conference. And I think what the Zuma group created was the point that President Ramaphosa is not fully in control of the conference. There's a lack of respect towards him. And I think he found this very, very negative. But he still continued, and he did his job under these difficult circumstances. For him, that is a positive tendency.
There's obviously going to be a lot of flexing of muscles, political muscle, dare I say, at this particular conference. But let me take a moment to just apologize to our viewers. We're really having a field day with both our connections to our telephone line and our video because, ironically, of stage 6 load shedding in most parts, if not all, of the country. So hopefully these connections actually hold. So let's carry on in hope, Dr. Zamo, and speak about this political report now. The president, of course, starting 7 hours late yesterday, and when he finally took to the podium, stood and spoke for 3 hours. What stood out for you?
First and foremost, we must also realize and also mention that this is not a presidential report. It is called a presidential report, but it's a report of the NEC of the ANC, because before a president delivers a report to the conference, that particular political report is adopted by the NEC as a structure. And now it's a report of the ANC NEC. And I think based on the thing that the president has spoken about, I read the entire report, which consists of 17 pages. And the president, of course, was not reading word by word. He was actually delivering the executive summary of the report. But there are things that I think the NEC have spoken about through the report, which actually raised some concerns. Number one, the issue of the release of the former SACP leader, Prisani. The manner in which they've actually presented the report or their remarks on what has happened simply give you an indication that the ANC is not in government. It's like the ANC is outside of government. They are speaking as outsiders, not as part of the government. Secondly, the issue of the Freedom Charter and the NDR. The ANC spoke as if they are not in government in this particular point. When they speak about the Freedom Charter and the NDR, it simply means that there are things that they want to do, but they cannot do because they are not in government. And we cannot be talking about the Freedom Charter as if it's something that is visionary. They should be living the Freedom Charter. They should be implementing the objectives of the Freedom Charter. And don't see that happening, particularly if you look at the developments and the things that they've mentioned as per the Freedom Charter and the National Democratic Revolution. And thirdly, the president spoke about the sustained economic growth and the electricity and ESCOM. And I wonder, because the president said there is a green shoot starting to sprout, and you wonder whether is it really true or not. Currently, we are in stage 6. And which shows that there is no development at all. And if you look at the economic growth, there's no development at all because they also spoke about the triple challenges, which is poverty, unemployment, and inequality.
Yeah.
And we still see a lot of challenges in terms of all those in all those 3 areas. So I wonder which development they are referring to, because where I'm seated, I don't see it happening. And the president also spoke about the money that was allocated to COVID-19. I did not see anything in relation to the money allocated to the victims of the floods, the recent floods that have taken place in April this year. I don't see anything happening. And I would have expected also to hear the NEC speaking about the political spectrum in local government, particularly in the coalition government, what is happening in the coalition government, what is the observation of the NEC, what is the position of the ANC in the political dynamics that are happening in the local government. And also, lastly, I don't want to take much of your time.
Right.
The NEC report, or the president report, spoke about halting the ANC decline, which is actually a misrepresentation of the fact, because ANC is declining and there's no halt of decline. If you look at the election in 2009, the ANC have 264 seats. In 2004, they have 249 seats. In 2019, they have 230 seats. So I don't know which decline they are actually halting, because there's a huge decline. If you look at the numbers, and if you look at the upcoming elections, you will see that you will think that the decline will be much more bigger than what has transpired over the past 15 years.
Very interesting indeed. And we are spoiled for choice about what to actually hone in on because of just how long this report is. I'm going to ask that we put our discussion on a pause for a while. When we come back, we'll continue with it with a specific focus on some of the concessions that the president made around how ANC policy, in some ways, got us to the crisis we're facing at Eskom. Do stay with us. Welcome back as we continue making sense of day one of the ANC's 55th National Conference, which is, of course, underway in Newzroom. So much taking place. In some ways, we're delayed almost by a day now. And to help us make sense of it all is Professor Andre Duvehange, joining us via our telephone line. Via our video link is Dr. Zamo Mbandlwa. To both of you, once again, thanks for sticking around as we continue making sense of it all. So, Professor Duvehange, yesterday, the president conceding that it is shortcomings in ANC policy, it is elements of state capture, widespread corruption that has plunged this crisis into an energy crisis. Many will say it's a little too late, but to what extent do you reckon at least it's a step forward in trying to fix how we got here?
Well, I think the positive from the presentation is that at least President Ramaphosa and the initiative of the ANC is taking responsibility for certain tendencies that are continuing from the times of the Zuma administration until now. The problem, however, is their lack of going forward in dealing with these issues. And there we are thinking about things you refer to endemic corruption. We think about the crisis of local government in South Africa. And I think a huge problem for the ANC at this point is their declining support. We have seen this just a day or two back with what happened in Lichtenburg, where the ANC only got 16 out of the 39 seats in the Tsabotla, giving them a clear minority. And that tendency is going to continue, I believe, towards the 2024 election, putting the ANC in severe trouble. And it was difficult for the president to find positive, constructive things that reflecting positively on his performance during his term as president of the country and president of the ANC. So in that sense, I think it is a difficult task lying ahead, and he's getting a lot of resistance from people within the bigger group of people sitting there, and that is making it extremely difficult for him. There was also rumors of the possibility of the establishment of a new party. I don't know if that is strategic propaganda at this point, associating a new party with the president. So all of these are happening. A lot of propaganda, a lot of this organization struggled with the organization of the party going in a proper way. As you mentioned, they are running late, and there's not a lot of positive feedback coming back to the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. As you're speaking, we're just showing visuals, by the way, of a business forum breakfast that's going to take place sometime within the hour. That's going to be led in part by Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana. He, of course, certainly has his task ahead of him when it comes to convincing business why the ANC makes sense, essentially, as a governing party for business in this country. So we're keeping one eye on that, and as soon as there's any kind of official start of that proceeding, we'll be live in that particular room. But we continue making sense of yesterday's developments. Dr. Zamo, let's bring you back into the discussion. Interestingly enough, President Cyril Ramaphosa also conceding yesterday that the political infighting, the mudslinging, I think the words he used was, when we as leaders are at one another's throats, there is a direct result in the form of electoral decline. You've already mentioned there that in some ways he's misrepresented the facts around how they've been able to arrest this decline. But the ANC, once again, is able to diagnose these problems very well. Whether or not they fix them, and urgently enough, is a completely different discussion.
Thank you so much, and you are raising a very important point. You see, I always say the ANC do not need an opposition party to collapse the ANC. The ANC needs itself to collapse itself, because those who actually are not able to lead, or those who are contesting the leadership position and not being elected, they are the ones who actually fight with the incumbent. They are the ones who always want to portray the incumbent as failure in the society. So in a way that even if, no matter what happens on Tuesday, the outcome of the conference, those who will not emerge in this conference will always not want to work with those that will be elected, unlike the ANC, unlike how the ANC used to operate in the past. Now, because what makes things more difficult is that those who are elected actually want to oppress those who are contesting. There is no, the ANC of today do not actually work together regardless of the political or preferences of leadership. Now, that's where the problem is. And also, I was hoping that maybe the president was going to talk about the political killings, because the political killings in the country are a major problem, which then cause a lot of credible people in the ANC failing to speak, because when they speak, they are then receiving death threats, and they are also being subjected to victimization by the ANC leadership. So I was hoping that maybe that was going to be a discussion. Look at what has happened in Mpumalanga. About 2 leaders have been killed in a space of 6 months, less than 6 months. And the ANC, at a national or a provincial level in Mpumalanga, is not saying anything about this. And people that are actually contesting leadership positions, they are not really interested in changing the lives of the people, but they are interested in leadership positions so that they can change their lives and the lives of those that are close to them. So I think once the ANC take away all the allowances and all the benefits that people will receive when they are in leadership, then I think people will genuinely want to lead the ANC, not because of what the ANC can give to them, but because of what they can give to the ANC.
Sure. The SACP mentioning yesterday that the country is desperate for an ANC that cares about the interests of South Africans. Professor Duvehange, as we round up our conversation this morning, a point I've tried to kind of labor home since we started tracking our build-up to this conference is I wonder how much time is actually spent having rigorous discussions around policy, engaging academics, activists in the space, people who spend their lives unpacking what it will take in order to change this country or to turn the country around. Are you optimistic at all, given what's taken place on day one, that there'll be time for those rigorous discussions?
No, I am not that positive. As we have seen, the conference started 7 hours late. The whole debate is around personalities and not around policy issues. And we know as a country we are facing major government and governance issues, not to talk about the economy and socio-economic challenges. And we would have expect a responsible party in government to act on these issues, to come forward with plans, but it seems as if they are more busy with each other, fighting for the top positions, undermining each other. We had a lot of, and I agree with the previous presenter, that there were a lot of assassinations in the country. So this is by no means a healthy scenario, and I think the ANC as an organization is facing its biggest challenges, at least since 1994. And my big concern is, can South Africa afford to have a government like the ANC at this point in time, facing all the challenges politically, economically, and socially? And what we need to see is strong leadership, and I'm afraid that is absent within the context of the ANC. And I'm afraid that the ANC may come out of this conference more disunited than they went into this conference. And this will severely impact on their support base, and already we have seen surveys indicating a drop in ANC support to below 50. Some surveys go as low as 37%. And if there's going to be a split in the ANC, we are going to see even a lower level of support. And this may take the country to other extreme levels. And from a scenario perspective, I'm really concerned not only about the ANC, but about the general situation in the country at this point in time.
Loud and clear, and it's on that sobering note that we'll have to leave it. Let me apologize once again to our viewers for the quality of that line. But Professor Andre Duvehange and Dr. Zamo Mbandlwa are both political analysts helping us take stock of day one of the conference. To both of you, thanks very much indeed.